You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. And right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. So visit FanDuel.com today to get started. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you. Still very much with hoops on our minds. We got a little time to bide before we head off to Lawrence, Kansas for Red Raiders and Jayhawks coming up on Saturday, but still thinking about what we saw go down at United Supermarkets Arena on Monday night, and wanted to get back, of course, to maybe what we're feeling as far as the timeline this week for Chance McMillian and Darrion Williams, two guys that were not available on Saturday. We'll also get to some sound from Red Raider head coach Grant McCasland regarding the decision-making behind a player's availability, which may not actually go exactly the way that a fan might think. And I also thought it was really interesting pertaining specifically to this situation as it relates to McMillian and Williams, which included a description that involved being prepared, it sounds like, for Chance's absence, and maybe not so much, at least the day before game day, for the absence of Darrion Williams. So that also could spin an expectation for this week's timeline into some different directions. We'll get into that. And of course, I also want to get into the ramification, the impact of the result itself on Monday, Chris, as it relates to not like AP ranking, but net ranking, KenPom, things like that, moving forward. And of course, I'd like to ask you a bigger picture question when it comes to the Big 12 Conference and more hardware heading the way of the Houston Cougars, who have only been in this league for about 15, 20 minutes now. What does that say for the league that they've had so much success? And we'll get into that coming up in just a moment as well. But just wanted to gauge your feel as we get into the remainder of the week for Williams and McMillian. Obviously, two of the three best players, I think, on the Red Raider roster. So a lot of folks going to be dialed into their progress the next few days.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not real sure what I'm glad. I mean, that's one of the things that I finished up with Grant on Monday night is like, I bet you're glad you've got a few days here to kind of decompress and reassess and just kind of hit the pause button, like the whole, let me get a real life time out here. Been a lot going on. That Saturday, Monday, it comes with a payoff, and this is kind of the payoff, is you do get some extra time between your next game, and I think you probably need it physically, mentally, everything, and just to kind of again hit pause a bit. And I don't know what it looks like with Chance or Darrion Williams. I guess after the game on Saturday against West Virginia, if you would have asked me, I probably would have said, I don't know if Chance plays. Again, I talked to you about going out there for senior day, and there's a limp there. And I go back to Fort Worth when it happened, and he's messing with the top of his shoe. And, it wasn't like an ankle. To me, it looked like the top, and like, boy, for basketball players, it's like a foot issue. Is just, we remember what Warren Washington dealt with last year. And when you're moving and cutting and all those things, D5s, I don't know what Darrion's issue. I mean, I saw the replay. I know it was an ankle or foot, combination of it. Was it accumulation of some of the issues he's had leading up to that? I'm not real sure, but I guess I would have thought that Darrion would have been able to play, or it was a possibility. And I was a little more worried about Chance going into the Houston game. And so many times when these injuries happen, it's not – people are like, well, he came back in. That's fairly typical. It's the day after. That's where the reality sets in, the swelling, the soreness, the pain, the whatever. That's when that kind of sets in. You're not real sure how bad it's going to be until the day after. But, and to go at Houston with just six dudes is kind of crazy. And I just think I firmly believe if you have, and unfortunately as a Tech fan or broadcaster or casual observer, you can go back in so many cases. Like if you'd have just had this dude playing against this team, the outcome would have been different. That's not how it works. Tariq Owens in the national championship game, a normal Tariq Owens, you're probably national champions in 2019. Nobody can convince me otherwise with that ankle issue that he had. But I feel like if either Darrion or Chance play against Houston, I think you get a different outcome. But
I thought you were going to keep going down memory lane. Isn't Keenan Evans on that list also?
Well, Keenan Evans and the year before with a Big 12 title. And
Zach Smith, I think, in a similar kind of category.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe that's just the way this thing works. I don't know. I mean, it's a long season. It's a grinding season. It got longer this year for Big 12 members with a 20-game schedule.
Yeah. Yes, it did. And I think that it's taking a toll on everybody. And I think that leads to, I don't want to call it like load management, but you have decisions to make. You have to figure out what makes the most sense for us right now. What are we playing for? What does this player have that he's dealing with? Can we mesh it together? I mean, there's all kinds of dynamics at play here. And like Monday night, as I tried to document, like what exactly was on the line for you? A big win, no doubt, in front of a juiced up crowd, but you're unlikely to get to the end of this race here as a Big 12 champ. Again, it would have helped you, but it would have required a lot more help elsewhere. And so was it worth risking big picture or being healthy for the NCAA tournament or whatever? So
I thought it was really interesting. As I mentioned, I wasn't in the building. I was watching the television broadcast, and I thought it was interesting to hear Fran Fraschilla say that he just kind of threw off the cuff. If this was a Big 12 final, these guys are playing. And I thought that was, I don't know if that got anybody else's attention, but I thought that was kind of interesting. And it sort of ties into what you're saying there. What was on the line on February 24th, actually.
And again, is it worth taking a chance? Now, again, if you've got a title on the line, there's hardware and they're handing out rings based on the result, I think you probably go, screw it. Let's chips, middle of table. Here we go. Let's push them in. And that's not what you had. I do think though that Grant had a healthy respect for the individuals that did play and played through some things. And because, keep in mind here, Federico has been playing with a shoulder issue for really, I guess, 2 months, really since late, what would that have been, like mid-December, I guess, and it's really still there. He's just dealing with it, and you don't know it because he's not complaining about it. It's not talked about a lot. Christian Anderson in this game plays through a jacked-up ankle, and he just kind of kept pushing and denying LJ Cryer and all these things. And so I think Grant is actually – learning more about some of the guys and all that on where their pain threshold is or their toughness, where that is, all those kinds of things. I think that's fair. And Chance's deal, man, I'm telling you, man, when I saw that, he's out there with his family, and it's like, we all know, we've all had a foot or an ankle issue in life. Okay. You tweak something, whether it's in sports or you stepped on something wrong and you're like, okay, something's not right. And you try to get up at work and walk down the hallway, or you're walking down the class at school, and like you don't want to see like everybody watching you limp. So you kind of try to keep it as steady as you can. You grit your teeth. And that's what, to me, I saw Chance doing as he walked out there. It's like he was trying not to limp, but there was a subtle, and I'm like, okay, he's just walking. This isn't good. So that's why I say it didn't surprise me that he didn't play on Monday night. And it's also, I guess I'll just say this too, it's not going to surprise me if he doesn't play in Lawrence over the weekend either. Yeah,
kind of got that vibe to it, but we'll see.
Same conversations. Like, what's the risk? I mean, we need him big picture, all the things. But yeah.
Get him over to the Mediterranean for some of those North African stem cells. Know what I mean? I don't know how much time we got. How quick can you get back to Lawrence, Kansas on Saturday?
Mr. Miyagi, yes.
Yeah, we need some of that voodoo working.
Daniel's son. No pain, no pain.
Let's take a listen to this comment from Tech head coach Grant McCasland that was really interesting. Got some attention from a lot of different directions. I know a few Matador mobsters perked up at the sound of this. Was texting with Eric regarding this comment, and it was a question about availability and decision making at this point in the year. And Grant McCasland's answer was really interesting. There may be more juice to it than you might even assume. First, today's episode brought to you by PrizePicks. Testing your skills on PrizePicks this football season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports and the best way to spice up any game, anytime. You think you got what it takes to win up to 100 times your money? All you got to do is select 2 to 6 players, pick more or less on their projected stats, place your entry, and boom, you're ready to roll. PrizePicks is not only the best way to get action on sports in most states, including Texas, but PrizePicks also puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When the picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. With easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and a giant selection of players, projections, and stat categories, it's no surprise that PrizePicks is the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So get in on the fun and the winning and download the PrizePicks app today and use our code LOCKEDONCollege, and you're going to get $50 instantly when you play only $5. Again, that's our code LOCKEDONCollege on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you just play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. With PrizePicks, run your game. Regarding decision-making behind these players specifically, but I also thought the process he described for his program as far as decision-making regarding availability was concerned was interesting. And I was even a little surprised to kind of hear him take himself out of the equation as far as those discussions are concerned, talking about trusting his staff, trusting the player, and how each case is really different. Here is Red Raider head coach Grant McCasland.
I'm going to try to think about how to thoughtfully answer this. I just don't make any decisions as to who plays. And every situation is so unique, you know. It really is. It's like every player, say Christian Anderson, for example, he like twisted his ankle in the first half and he was limping in the locker room, but he still went and played the second half, you know. And I mean, like, he didn't shoot it well, but he goes 0 for 6 from 3, but he's out there running around chasing LJ Cryer all over the place and not letting him score. And I just love the fight in that. And so everybody has their own version of what they can go through in order to continue to play. And I just don't have any conversations with anybody about that. I trust Mike and I trust our guys. And sometimes you understand it and it's clear in regards to what the best thing for them, and sometimes it's not clear. You know, it's like a really hard decision to decide what to do in these scenarios. And I'll just say, I knew Chance wasn't going to play. I felt like it was going to be hard for him to play based off of the experience of the last couple of days. I did not know that about D5 yesterday, or I would have honestly said that. I had no clue. And that happened today, and so I just trust our staff and trust our guys to make decisions as we think is best for them in this moment. But I will say it's not easy.
So I think there are some things to unpack from that answer, aren't there?
I,
And for those listening, by the way, via podcast, the long pauses you heard, he's at the table with his eyes closed and in thought, trying to consider what he's about to say. So made even maybe a little bit more interesting visually.
Yeah, and we need to get into that because I really do appreciate the thought that Grant goes into each answer when he's asked about him or his team or certain situations. I think that there's some coaches that get ruffled or get whatever, but I think he's very transparent. I think he's very honest. I think he's very thoughtful with what he said. Now, the pauses there, it's interesting, you know, and you hear him go through. I don't know how they decide exactly who plays or not, and I think that maybe those decisions now involve different people than they used to because of the era that you're in and who you're dealing with. A coach can't make a player play. Okay. If you're hurt or you're sick, I mean, can you go or not? And this is why recruiting, character, let's just talking big picture. This is a broad thing because this is all the things that have to factor into this, especially these days. But like, That's why coaches are or general managers or whoever is vetting people that you bring into the program. Like you hear the words culture and character. We need to know how you're white. Do you really love it? Or you just, is this a means to an end? Or is basketball just or football or whatever? Is this just like a platform for you to kind of get what you want out of life instead of like, no, I really love this thing. Okay. So there's that. And you have a situation now where in the NIL era, depending on who you're dealing with, they may have an agent that you must kind of consult with, deal with, or that player is the one consulting their agent. Like, hey, what do you think? I mean, what's on the line for the team, for the player? All these things. What's the actual injury? What's the pain threshold? What can we, then there's the medical obviously component. Like, can we hurt it worse? Is this just you got to suck it up and go? If you can suck it up and go, everything's going to be fine. You're not going to hurt it worse. I mean, so who's weighing what? Who's factoring in here? But it sounds to me like Grant just kind of removes himself from the equation, and that's why you just lean into character and your medical people saying, hey man, he can't go. He's too sick. He's too hurt, and all those things. And then you just trust that if a guy can go, he'll roll, and I don't know.
Is that common, you think, in your experience or program to program? How do you
I think so. I think it's a group think in a lot of these. I think Grant, the most accurate thing he said was that right there's every situation is different, and that's completely true. Again, because every injury is different, every player's situation is different on what they have to gain or to lose or whatever. The team factors in all of it. It's just, but I did find it interesting that he was so careful, and he went out of his way to praise a guy like Christian Anderson playing through some stuff.
He also did that,
and I think that's
and that was fresh after the game. If you
didn't, it was, and in no way are we trying. Is this like I just don't know, but I thought it was like you did. You thought it was like this. This was I don't know. This was interesting.
But he had no clue the day before. Yeah,
right.
Specifically pointed that out about D5. So
so maybe he just was like, man, coach, I can't go. And maybe they thought that they thought he would be able to, or he was going to. And so maybe that it was just a shock to the system. Like, okay. I mean, so I don't know.
Yeah. And we'll probably never get a full account of that timeline, but just interesting. I think for those whose ears it perked up, I get it. And there was maybe a little bit more to that answer than what was on the surface. So something to pay attention to. And I do appreciate the thoughtful answer. And I think it's something consistent from Coach McCasland. I find myself becoming a little bit of I don't know, am I becoming a McCasland fanboy? Am I becoming like one of those people that would follow Fish around the country and just hang out in the parking lot with all the other Fish fans, just following them on tour, man, rocking and rolling to this Big 12 schedule, selling hemp jewelry or something? Shout out to Amy. He's striking chords almost at every turn that I just appreciate for whatever reason. And I don't know how and the thing that makes me really appreciate it, I think this has to be a part of it. He has psychotic intensity in game, and I'm sure in practice and in other types of conversations where that's appropriate. But somehow the ability to kind of balance that at the same time is quite the talent. And I guess it's also on display in a way, just as an example, in game, kind of in the way that it seems like, at least from my view, he, has exchanges with officials and converses with officials to where he's not being sweethearted. But at the same time, it seems like I don't know what it is. I mean, you're 5 feet from him when a lot of those exchanges are happening. So you see it better than I do. But I just have a great appreciation for having that insane intensity and competitiveness and all that goes with that in one instant. But then also at the same time, like whether it's some of these like in-game interviews or post-game or almost any setting, just these very thoughtful answers that I find them really fascinating to listen to. I was telling you not long ago that, just as an example, and I'm not trying to compare these coaches, they're in wildly different stages and wildly different trophy cases at this point in their careers. But when we'd be at Big 12 media days back in the day for football and Bill Snyder was at the podium, I'd just be there listening, not taking notes for any journalistic effort, but just because I wanted to be like a better person or something. He's just dropping pearls. Now, there's some football pearls, but there's also just like other pearls in there as well. And I get, again, I hesitate to even make that comparison because he's a legend, but I just appreciate Grant McCasland's perspective on a lot of these things and the way that he will offer it as well. At the same time, having for at least 40 minutes, the craziest intensity that probably anybody in the building is going to have after things actually get tipped off. I know I'm rambling, but does that make sense?
1,000%. And I watch and listen to a lot of coaches. It fascinates me just in general. And part of what I do in the broadcasting, I'm always watching like the opposing coaches, because sometimes we have to use some of that stuff for various things and some of the broadcasts. And I always just want to know what the other coach is thinking about his team or how they're wired. And we'll reference a lot of that on our show here. But what I hear you saying is, and I completely 1,000% agree, is that you listen to him because you feel like you're learning. And it's the fun kind of learning, in that it's not coach speak. It's not just generic. Like there's some realness to it. And coaches there's 4 kinds of coaches out there in the world. There is good man, good coach. There is good man, bad coach. There is bad man, good coach, and there's bad man, bad coach. Okay. Grant he's a good dude and he's a good coach. And those are the hardest ones out there to find. And so you'll hear people talk about how all these things, but it's like, man, but there's no drama. There's no this or there's no that, like some of the bad stuff that maybe goes on, or with the way he rolls outside of, or you're seeing somebody that's not very genuine, and I don't know, or he treats people poorly. No, he treats everybody great, but he is extremely intense, as you see. And I think the best thing that Grant, and this is what good coaches are able to do, he is able to compartmentalize easily. And that's very difficult to do when it's all coming at you fast. And this is what head coaches must. They've got to deal with team, donor, X and O, sometimes all within like 5 minutes of each other, or an official, or
donkey herd. As an
whatever,
example.
Whatever. But it's like the ability to turn it on and off and like quickly like pivot and all these things all very quickly throughout a day or in the middle of a game or whatever. But Grant was given this gift of being able to do this. And I think he's careful with the way he communicates with everybody, because he wants it to be thoughtful. He wants it to be very real. He doesn't want to just be emotional and off the cuff and like, man, I shouldn't have said that. My apologies. No, he never really rolls that way. I mean, I roll that way often, unfortunately.
And it's that way.
Exactly. And
maybe that's why I admire the other way so much. I don't know.
I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. By the way, I don't apologize for anything I said on a microphone in Houston, Texas earlier this month. Zero apologies.
Of course not.
Yeah.
I think we've run the gamut. I'm thinking of some previous head coaching experiences and the description that you just gave as far as some of those categories are concerned. And we've run the gamut, probably like a lot of programs have over the years. But yeah, there was this thought while I'm thinking about, talking about Grant McCasland, and I'm thinking, okay, well, we're also winning and everybody loves everybody right now. So that's great. And that's got to be accounted for as far as some of the fawning is concerned. I know there's some inherent bias that's involved with, enjoying the product also as far as in wins and losses go. But I just remember the time during the Chris Beard era where it's like, man, we're winning. And this is a ton of fun. And then you talk to somebody around the program and everybody's kind of on a knife's edge thinking that whatever the end looks like, it's going to be involving flames of some kind at some point. And I'm like, okay, well, I thought we were all having fun winning. I didn't know there was some other layer to this. And it just seems that you've maneuvered your way out of that environment by whatever divine intervention that came about on, I don't know, say a random April 1st or whatever it might be. And Grant McCasland, look, everybody's got things that they've got to work on. Obviously, he's not some perfect basketball coach or perfect man, but he seems to have so far managed a program that has avoided that type of layer. There are always in a college, this as well as anyone, Chris, in a college sports program, there are always things going on every day of the week, every day of the year that you're having to manage as far as a skeleton here or a skeleton there that pops up. But you get what I'm saying as far as the atmosphere when you were also winning at a very high level in the Beard era, but there was a different type of spin to it, however you might describe that.
And in the Mark Adams era too.
Very true. Yes.
I mean, and like, I think the thing about Chris was he's won everywhere he's been. He pushed really hard and he made everybody uncomfortable and he demanded their best. And sometimes people had a hard time with that, whether you're in the administration, you're in the marketing department, whether you're a broadcaster, whether you're a player, and sometimes around there it was a ton of fun, but other times it was extremely uncomfortable, but he kind of thrived on that. And that's why it's all about button pushing. And when it was fun, it was really fun. But there was obviously some mistakes that he made elsewhere and all those things. But this is why he pushes so hard. This is why somebody like that doesn't stay anywhere for very long, because you kind of wear out. You're welcome, or you just push so hard that it's like, okay, now time to go push hard somewhere else.
I pushed so hard, I've pushed all the way through to the other side, and now find another wall to push.
That's right. That's right. But
and more power to anybody doing it however they choose. But I'm appreciating the way that our guy's doing it right now.
And as we've seen, there's multiple ways to go about this. And Grant's a little more even keeled. He's more well-rounded in that he's a family guy. He does his kids stuff and all these things. But I think people are, and I told you this before we started taping this episode, is that I had a conversation with one of the TV guys last year, and he's like, "Don't you just love talking ball with Grant?" And he just has this unique way to talk basketball with you that it ties in, but it's very thoughtful, and it's just very different than how some people talk about it. And I think you're seeing some of that play out. Now, what all this was about injuries or decision-making or how you get from A to B on all that, I don't know. But I appreciate that he closes his eyes and tells you, let me think about how to process what I'm about to tell you and be thoughtful with it. And then really in a roundabout way, it was a huge compliment to Christian Anderson. I know I feel like a broken record, and we're figuring out ways to compliment Christian Anderson, but that's ultimately how we got what we got out of that answer, is that every situation's different, and ultimately Christian Anderson's a dude. He played through some stuff. I respect the heck out of him. By the way, his defense was really good at the end, and so
he tossed that in anytime. I'm fine with
it. That's right.
All right, and to wrap up the Love Fest, they are 0-1 this week, so we'll just cap it with that. Let's bounce back and get a win, boys. It's all great, but wins are what we're here for.
Yes.
Speaking of that 0-1, the impact of that game, actually, is it a wash? I mean, given what Houston represents as a team, and I'm talking about some of your various metrics, I know it clinched them at least a share of the Big 12 title, I guess, and I'm sure they're not going to be sharing it. But as far as Tech's impact, what are we anticipating this week, or what have you already seen?
The two things that it would have done for you had you won it would have given you a lot more street cred. I don't know what that's worth, because all the talking heads would have been like, whoa, 6 dudes, you did this, you beat them twice, they hardly lost. It would have really raised your street cred. Now, what's that worth? I can't really say to you. Metric-wise, it would have, I think, lowered. I think we kind of talked about this. You've got floor and ceiling and all that, and it would have raised your floor up to where your floor would have been higher on the seed line and things like that. That you're like, okay, they've got this on the resume. They're not falling any lower than this, because like if you can get to that 3 line, which is going to be tough, I think, but because you're right in that 4 or 5 sweet spot, and that's what's scary there, is that you are, I guess theoretically you could drop to a 6 if the wheels were to come off. This Kansas game will be big for you in a variety of different ways, but that 4 or 5 line, what's tricky about that is you could even argue that maybe you're better off as a 6. You'll get a tougher first round game, and a tougher second round game, but like the Sweet 16 game would be theoretically maybe a bit easier than if you're a 4 or 5. it's like you got to see a 1 seed on the second weekend if you're able to advance. So it's all, I guess.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, tomato, the way
Yeah.
you would want to look at it. But to answer the question real quick, your net ranking stayed the same, and your Ken Palm ranking stayed the same. The Torvik that everybody talks about, which is another data-driven metric that everybody looks at, you stayed the same. You're like basically 7 in the country across the board, in the net, in the Ken Palm, Torvik, all that stuff. You may slightly get adjusted as different results pour in through the rest of the week, but that's what I'm saying. Because you hung in there, and because it was Houston, it really didn't move. You would have seen a slight bump if you win it, for sure. And then if things don't go well, you would have just not fallen much because you just got that on your resume. But now, we'll see kind of where you go from here with it. But not a ton to gain and not a ton to lose there based off the result on Monday night.
I want to wrap it up with a conversation I think that is similar to one we sort of had during football season when asking about the Big 12 conference and what it means for it to have a newcomer have so much success in a football context, which at the time we actually discussed this. I think we're talking more like Colorado, BYU. I don't even think Arizona State was the team that we were focused on at that time. They wind up fitting that bill eventually, being in the Big 12 title game. But I wonder maybe how you feel about that from a basketball perspective, because there's basically the two options that, hey, it indicates Big 12 made a great selection. You've ramped things up with a terrific addition. They're coming in and they're cleaning house. It could also indicate to those who were previously in the league, whoa, is this a reality check? Are we taking some step back, or are we regretting inviting them to join the neighborhood? So what do you think, man? Because Houston has come in, and what a run it's been for them since they have joined the league.
Yeah, Houston has done in the Big 12 exactly what they did in the American, and they just run the league for the most part. And I think that you're seeing Kelvin Sampson put a cap on a Hall of Fame coaching career. I mean, people don't realize, like, in the last 4 years, they've had 2 Sweet 16s, an Elite Eight, and a Final Four appearance in the last 4 years. Pretty salty little stretch, wouldn't you say?
I would.
And we would take it. And when we had that, kind of little run, you're thinking like, yeah, puff that chest out. I mean, you're kind of feeling it, right? And this is pretty much standard. I think that it helps a guy like Brett Yormark sell this sport. I don't know if Houston is some national brand in that it moves the needle from a TV standpoint. I think that he would, while he can't say this, I think that the league needs Kansas to be better than they have been, because that is a needle mover. That is we can sell this. And it's tricky because they can't ever say this aloud, but this is the reality of it. But I think that from a basketball standpoint, Grant McCasland said this after the game was over the other night. I told Kelvin Sampson, you're carrying the banner for this league, and I appreciate it because I know when I get you on our schedule, there's a huge payoff there. We get to see where we match up against one of the best teams in the country, and they are kind of the standard right now. This is Houston's basketball league. Until somebody suggests otherwise, that this is just the reality of it. Yes, Arizona's got some great tradition. Iowa State's a pain in the ass. You've got some things that you've done in recent years, but this is Houston's league, and they wrote it on your whiteboard. Back-to-back Big 12 champs. It sucks when I see that. However, if I was in Houston and I'd have just punched my ticket to a back-to-back title win too, I probably would have wrote it on their whiteboard too. So this is just how it works. and what they are doing is just nuts. Because they've just, when they've been healthy, because last year the wheels kind of fell off because Jamal Shedd got hurt, they had a few other injuries. Arsenault didn't play most of the year. They just got really wound down, and it just was a shell of what it could have been. So far this year, they've been able to put their best foot forward, and I think you're seeing the results here because they can beat you in a variety of different ways with a variety of different people. It's going to be a scary matchup for somebody, and I hope to see them again in Kansas City. I really do. Granted that you have all 8 of your guys, I would like to see what that looks like because we have yet to see it.
Yeah, that'd be all right. Kind of a wild few days in the Big 12 conference basketball wise. I think speaking of Kansas, dropping out of the AP poll for the first time in 1,100 days, I think, if I'm remembering correctly.
And then it coming out that he considered for a day about taking the Oklahoma State job at his alma mater.
Guard.
Which, yeah, kind of caused
And then you got
a
a coaching change with Utah as well, with a program that I don't know that they were headed anywhere quickly, but I thought they were in the category of overachieving this year, given preseason expectations. But they go ahead and cut ties. Utah with their head coach. Just kind of an interesting little 72 hours, 4 or 5 days in the Big 12 conference.
Yeah, the Craig Smith thing was very bizarre because I watched their game on Sunday. Call me a sicko, but yeah, Utah and UCF on a Sunday afternoon. I was paying attention. I just want, again, trying to learn, trying to see what else was going on, and they had that game down to the wire and just allowed Darius Johnson, which we've seen for UCF, to hit a bucket at the very end of the game, and then they had a turnover with like 3 seconds left and didn't have a chance to throw up a Hail Mary. And then they lose by 3, I think it was. And I thought, okay, I mean, they're all the way across the country, but they're 7-9 in the league. And I thought they're grinding because, I mean, I've seen their talent. And to me, they are the least talented team in the country. And I've said to myself on more than one occasion, how have they won this many games in this league?
In the country? Did you mean to say conference or in the country? Least talented?
In the conference. Did I say country? Okay. Yeah, in the sorry.
Either would kind of blow you away, but just
yes, in the conference. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. No, yeah. I'm glad. Thank you for correcting that.
Yeah.
Somebody would have heard that and go, what?
Youths are going to be mad. They're going to be
upset. That's right. They just there's not a lot of natural ability and juice and quick twitch and all the things, and I think he squeezed about as much out of that deal as you can. So I'm thinking, like, wow, what could he be pissed at? You were picked dead last, and all that. Okay, so 2 things that have happened there. This is a nod to what's going on up the road. BYU's recent resurgence, BYU's ability in the NIL space, BYU everything. It's been a rough year for Utah. Let's just say that.
Yes,
because what's been going on in the football and basketball wise with the old Cougs and the folks at BYU has just cast this bright, shining light on the folks in Utah, and they're trying to put on their sunglasses, and it's just not working. So they're making some moves, and June's making some changes. And I think what happens is, hey, we've got donors that'll step up from an NIL standpoint, but we're just not going to give it to Coach Smith. So, and Andre Miller.
Yeah,
Andre Miller, their favorite son, stud player. I watched him in the Final Four lose to Tubby Smith in Kentucky before Tubby came to Texas Tech. So anyways, I think that's how you get there, although strange. It's just different times, man. It's just different times. Yeah. And then the old Kansas thing, this is back-to-back years where they've won 2 in a row, but it's back-to-back. You realize what Kansas's final 3 games of the regular season are? Do you realize this?
What's that?
They will play Texas Tech in Lawrence on Monday. Excuse me, on Saturday.
Yeah.
Then they turn right around and they go to Houston on Monday. And then I think they host Arizona on the final Saturday. So their final 3 games are Texas Tech, Houston, and Arizona. 3 of the top 4 teams in the league. So we'll see kind of what this looks like. But this has been a wildly underachieving team based on Kansas standards because they were preseason ranked number 1 in the country. And then now you're not even ranked. I mean, to the Kansas fan that invented the sport, it's like, what? And Bill, you were thinking about Oklahoma State? Like, what are you doing, Bill? Coach Self? Like, how dare you?
For Kansas fans, you hate to see it. And by hate to see it, you mean you love to see it. So T's and P's, thoughts and prayers to Lawrence, Kansas, which, by the way, I am not sleeping on a trip to for Texas Tech. They used to hold senior day dunk contests on the Red Raiders in the Pat Knight era. I think you've won like half of one time or something. I'm not sleeping on that, but it's been an interesting year so far for the Jayhawks.
Don't sleep on it. Yeah,
no, not at all.
It will be very difficult. Yes,
absolutely. Yeah. All right, Chris, we'll circle back to the Jayhawks and Red Raiders later on in the week and get ready for that matchup. Appreciate your time as always, man. Enjoyed it, and we'll see you for the next one.
Okay, sounds good, man. Appreciate it. Keep hope alive, everybody. We'll get to the next one together. That's right. And get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Shout out to the everydayers out there for always riding along. And shout out to the Matador Mob. Hit the show notes and find a link for a free 14-day trial. That's your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text and straight to your phone. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks as always for the time. And we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.